Hi guys, welcome to today's video. This is for English Writing Skills, Term 4, the introduction video, and week 1 of Term 4. So far, we are halfway through this course. You have completed 50% of your graded work, your summary and the TED Talk, which was 30%, the 2 editing quizzes, which make up 20%, and now we head into the second half of the course, which is 50% of your grade, the argumentative essay. This whole term is focused only on this one piece of work, and we will really look at this writing process that was discussed in Intro to English Writing and in parts of term 3 as well, as we built up the outline and the note-taking, critical reading skills, and the drafts of the summary. So it's extremely important to realize that you need to submit drafts as well as an outline and do peer review in term 4 in order for you to be able to submit and successfully achieve and get feedback on your argumentative essay in term 4. So please keep that in mind and take a good look at the module guide as we head into this first fully digital term. As you guys know, we will be online up until at least June 1st as of this moment in April, and the likelihood that you will return to school for any kind of physical exams in June, I believe at the moment is low. At any rate, this course you do not need to do any physical exams or go in to the school to hand in a hard copy of any papers. It will all be digital, so this full term will be done digitally, and I will explain to you how that will look. So first I'll introduce you to me. My name is Ashley Foy-Terfort. My students obviously know who I am, but for the rest of you, if you are watching this and you have a different class teacher, I am the module manager of English Writing Skills, and I am also one of the 2 original creators of the course. I will post each week that we have lessons. I will post, probably I'll do every Monday morning around 8 a.m. I'll release the video for the week, and I will post a video covering the content of that week's lesson in a video lecture. No, I won't go over 100% of everything that you had to do from the module guide and from the Little Brown Handbook, but I will give you a good overview of that. In addition to my video lectures, you will receive PowerPoint slides with voiceovers from another English Writing Skills teacher, Miss Brigiert. And in addition to that, you will receive weekly lessons, live lessons, probably via Blackboard Ultra, the Collaborate function. If not, then your teacher may opt for Microsoft Teams. At any rate, you will have weekly lessons with your teacher. Please make sure to stay in touch with them and read their emails and announcements in order to find out when and how those lessons will take place. But you will receive constant support from your teachers as well as these general English writing skills resources, the videos and the PowerPoints. So we hope that that helps make this transition to online learning a bit easier for you. And please remember that if you have a question about the content of the course or anything you need to do for the course, most of the time you can find the answer for your question in the module guide. And if you can't, then you can ask your class teacher about it. And if he or she does not know, then you can always contact and reach out to me. Again, my name is Ashley Foy, F-O-Y, Terfort, T-E-R-V-O-O-R-T. You can also write a comment below on this video if you are having trouble and would like to contact me. Okay, so that is the format of this course. We'll be focusing in this term on the argumentative essay, and you will be receiving weekly structured education on this topic, and you will do peer reviews and get feedback yourself from your peers. And if you've succeeded in doing the steps in the peer reviews and the drafts, then you will also get teacher feedback on your paper, which will set you up for a really nice, strong final argumentative essay, which will give you a good foundation and base for year 2 of European Studies, which has more argumentation, of course, with our policy argumentation, negotiating policy, as well as second year writing courses, and just writing your final paper at the end of all this. Okay, so I've covered what we are doing this term. Now, more specifically for this lesson, you should have read Unit 8 in the Little Brown Handbook and gone through this section, this week's section of the module guide. So I'm going to go ahead and open the module guide. And this page right here is a really handy little page. This is page 8 of your module guide. And you have an entire overview of the semester. So we had term 3 as well as term 4 on there. So you see that that's all been done. We are here. This is term 4, and we are going to discuss what the argumentative essay is, and we're going to look at the content that you need to do for the argumentative essay. Now, you also should have read the Little Brown Handbook, Chapter 8. You'll see that in each week where there is an assignment, then you will see 9G for next week, and then the rest of 9 for the week after that, and then 4E. Most of the material from the Little Brown Handbook will not be covered in these video lectures or in the PowerPoint slides, because it is really self-study, and if you have a question, you contact your class teacher about your question that you have from that. If you need help with one of the exercises or you don't understand something, but that is your resource, your trusted resource to find good writing tips and guidance here for this course as well as your future writing courses here at European Studies. In week 8, you'll see that your essay, so next week your essay outline is due, and then you have 2 drafts, complete drafts that need to be submitted, and then you need to do some peer review for another student's work, and then you do that same thing over again. And if you haven't completed each of those 3 steps, then you don't get teacher feedback, and depending on how much you've done or how late you were after the deadlines, you possibly may not be allowed to submit your essay as well. Some teachers will have a bit more flexibility with that, but in theory you won't be allowed to submit the essay if you have not done the prior outline draft 1 and draft 2. So please keep that in mind. Also, it's just extremely important for you to build your writing skills and to become the best writer that you can. And then you have in week 11, if you've done these 3 things successfully on time, then you will get a one-on-one consultation with your teacher. Each teacher probably has a different style and a different schedule, so make sure that you are in touch with your class teacher about how they plan to do that. My intention for my groups is to do one-on-one consultations on Microsoft Teams meetings, and we will have 10 to 15 minute talks for only the students who have submitted outlines and drafts on time and provided sufficient feedback in their peer reviews for the students they're doing the peer review for. And then after that we have a buffer class, so that could be because a teacher was sick one week, so the live classes get pushed back a week, or a teacher could choose to use it to cover additional material, or it could be a question and answer week for students that still aren't clear about what exactly they have to do, etc. So make sure that you're in constant contact and communication with your teacher to see how the term is shaping up. Okay, so now we will move on to page 29 of the module guide. Here we are. Okay, so we're introducing the argumentative essay. Remember, each week's section of the module guide, it is your job before the lesson to make sure you've read through it. You don't have to do all the exercises in it. After you've completed the week and you've watched the video lecture, watched the PowerPoints, had your live lesson with your teacher, and you've done all of your assigned work, then you are more than welcome and encouraged to do any remaining exercises from the module guide that weren't completed, if there is a need and you have time. Okay, so this section here is for you guys to read on your own time. It's an introduction to argumentative writing and the meaning behind it and what to do. So that is something you guys should do by yourselves. And then there is here on page 30. So if you guys would like to turn to page 30, the outline of an argumentative essay. Depending on which teacher you had, you may or may not have seen in multiple different courses already in your first semester and in term 3, this body outline, structure outline of a text, of an essay. This one is specific for argumentative, slightly different than the ones we used in introduction, or for some teachers such as myself, I also used it for the summaries. The basic, in a nutshell, version of any academic work, perhaps not the longer reports, but of any essay, you have an introduction, body paragraphs, and a conclusion. So you want to make sure that you include the correct, proper information in each of those sections. Often students think they know how to write, doesn't matter, they just start writing, and they haven't actually collected their thoughts in a cohesive manner that really focuses and covers on the things that they need in each section. So your introduction, you really want to make sure that you build up to your thesis statement. And if you at this point still don't know what a thesis statement is, make sure to go back and review the sections in the Little Brown Handbook. There are many exercises about thesis statements, and we will talk about an argumentative thesis statement today as well, but that is something you're going to need throughout all of your studies, and you will really want to make sure that you have that down by the end of this course. So we want to make sure in the beginning of the introduction that you have some kind of interesting attention getter sentence. It doesn't have to be the most creative, interesting, unique attention getter, but something a little bit interesting that provides some insight and sets the mood for the rest of the essay. And then you transition into your topic. You give some of the additional information and details that you need to support that topic as you narrow down your information to your thesis statement, which is the last sentence of your introduction. And then you see here body paragraphs. That's where you support the thesis statement with your main ideas. Now, what many students do is they'll focus so much on the thesis statement, they'll work for a really long time on trying to get a great thesis statement, and then they kind of write haphazardly. You need to make sure that each body paragraph you have focuses on one of those main points in the thesis statement. If that main point that you are writing about does not appear anywhere in your thesis statement, then it's a bit questionable whether that is actually a main point or not. So you want to make sure that your thesis statement isn't extremely long, but it's very succinct and it covers the main points, right? And the main points are each covered one by one in your body paragraphs. And you need to make sure that included in those body paragraphs are topic sentences to introduce the main idea, evidence and examples, as well as some analysis. You don't just plop down ideas from other sources, but you need to critically look at and approach and elaborate on the idea that you have presented. And then at the end, you conclude your arguments and you transition into the next one. And you will see here, there's main point 1, main point 2, and then they have main point 3, or in many cases, a rebuttal or a counter argument. Now, many students ask me about this. Why would I bring up a counter argument that defeats the arguments that I'm making? The reason for this is that it's very easy to argue for something that most people agree with. For example, that college tuition should be waived for all students and university education should be completely free for all. I think nobody in the world would feel bad about students getting a free education. Maybe not the ones who are making a lot of money on it, but let's say in theory, most people in the world would like that idea. But why is that not the case? Why is it already not free? Usually if something isn't already the way that you are arguing for it to be, there's usually a good reason why not. Not always, but usually. So what does it take in order to have universities? Quality education. You need teachers, you need buildings, you need administrators, you need resources, you need accreditation processes, you need all of these different types of things in order for a university to exist. And that costs money. That costs a lot of money in some cases, sometimes more than others. So how are you going to offset those costs if the students aren't paying tuition? And that's such an obvious thing that people think about if somebody says all college should be free. So to take this argument that, I'm not saying that it's not an invalid argument, because there are many models out there and proposals and theories out there that suggest that higher education should be free, that have reliable peer-reviewed sources that support it. And there are real-life examples, such as Germany. You can go to college for free in Germany. Not even only Germans, even foreign students. So it works in some places and in some contexts, and it's been done, and there are arguments for it. However, there are obvious arguments about why it's not feasible. So in those cases where there's such an obvious counter argument for the argument you're making, it is best to address that and clearly lay out and explain why the counter argument is not as strong as the arguments for it. Why is your argument for it stronger and pushing down the counter argument against it? And that's something that can really enhance your paper. If you don't know how to structure that or don't know how to break it in there, and the counter argument isn't really that strong, or counter arguments, then yes, you can write a good argumentative essay without the counter argument. I usually prefer the essays that successfully push down the counter argument because it just is stronger. It does a more thorough job of proving their argument, in my opinion. Writing, at the end of the day, is never fully objective and neutral. It is subjective on many levels. But for the most part, if you can provide good sources that back up and have logical reasoning behind them, then the style or the this or that, the little small things won't make that big of a difference. And at the end of the day, regardless of which teacher you have, your grade will be within half of a point anyway, a 6 versus a 6.5, or an 8.5 versus a 9. Then there's also a way where you could do an argument for and then the argument against that you rebut. Or you can have one paragraph that covers all of the main counter arguments and then one rebuttal paragraph towards that. But you just have to be careful because remember, it's not that long of an essay, so you don't have that much space to do that. And you really want to focus on the precious space you have and words you have to make your strong argument for it. So you have to play around with it and look at it, and there are several different models within the Little Brown Handbook that show you different ways of doing this, and it is your job to read those sections of the Little Brown Handbook and to find those different examples and to work off of them. And then the conclusion, that last part here, so we got the upside down triangle and then the normal triangle. There you have, you reconnect at the beginning of it to your thesis statement. You don't just plop your thesis statement at the beginning of your conclusion. No, you draw your ideas back that you had written in your body paragraphs back to that thesis statement, and you reassess that and make your conclusive arguments on that, and then you make a general conclusion on the topic and or a recommendation or suggestion for the future based on those arguments. That does not mean that you bring up a new idea, and please do not put in rhetorical questions. The point is you are making the argument. You are not starting a philosophical debate. So you answer questions and make statements. You don't ask questions in your essay. Good. Moving on. So this here on page 31, this talks about the reasoning tree, and I will allow you guys to go ahead and look through that yourselves because that's something that you just have to practice a few times and get the hang of. When you do your outline for lesson week, well, if we're in term 4, lesson week 2, or term 8 from the full semester, lesson 8 from the full semester, then you can choose to make a reasoning tree in place of a standard outline, or you can do some form of a mind map as long as the main information of your arguments are there. So remember to go ahead and look at that. That was in research skills. Yes, in introduction to research skills, you've covered this. You know how to do this. Go back, review the material from that because that's extremely important. Students often finish research skills and think, "Whoo, I'm so glad to be done with that." You're never really done with research skills. It's the basis of your education. Knowing how to do proper research and how to use sources and to formulate an argument is really critical to the academic work that you produce. So make sure to go back and have a look at those materials again as you review this and start to write, come up with your topic and start to formulate your arguments for your topic. Okay, so one thing that we're not going to do in this video lesson, but you are strongly encouraged to do, is to choose one of the, on page 31 now, with me, choose one of the sample argumentative texts in the back at the end of the module guide in Appendix 2. You can do both if you want, but one of them at least, and take a look at this checklist. We had the checklist for writing good summaries last term, and this is one for writing good argumentative essays. And you have here the categories: what is a good thesis statement, what is the purpose, is it clear, supporting ideas, argumentation, and objectivity. And I highly encourage you to go through and do that, and then in your class thread section on Blackboard, post that in the discussion forum, and then you will hopefully get feedback from your teacher and or some peers based on what you've submitted. You can also just do it for yourself if you don't feel like sharing the work. That's also useful for your thought process and developing your critical analysis of argumentative essays. Sorry, that's the last point here from objectivity. Okay, for this one, I'm going to say bye-bye with my face and maximize the Word doc. In class assignment 2 now, this is on page 32, I would like for you guys to pause the video or just get out your module guide and take a look at this with me. Different types of texts have different kinds of thesis statements. Match the student-generated thesis statements in the left column below to the different types of essay in the right column. Okay? And notice the asterisk, the star below. It says, both a classification essay and a cause-effect essay are types of expository essays through which a writer organizes or sorts things into categories. You will have encountered these in the course Introduction to English Writing. So the essay that you had to do at the end based on those articles, that was an expository essay. Okay, so go ahead and take your time, look at the student thesis statements on the left, number 1, 2, and 3, and try to match what kind of thesis statement they are. Okay, so the domestic economy of England, its position in the world economy, and the changing face of the European middle class were the three main factors which led to the Industrial Revolution in the UK. And then we have social networking is changing the face of how business is conducted in a way that serves to further isolate and divide a company. And number 3, in order to provide a comprehensive analysis of the system of care in Central Europe, it is useful to discuss each economic dimension of care separately: voluntary care, state-provided care, and private care. I think number 3 is the easiest. You see here that it really points it out when it says it is useful to discuss each economic dimension of care separately, and that goes over classification. So 3 is B. Let's work our way from the bottom up. And then if we look at here, social networking is the changing face of how business is conducted in a way that serves to further isolate and divide a company. This is an example of A, an argumentative thesis. So we're saying that the argument here is that the face of how business is conducted by social networking leads to both isolation and division in a company. That's the argument that the author is trying to make in their essay. And then if you look at the first one, we have cause and effect. The cause, here we have the domestic economy of England, its position in the world economy, and the changing face of the European middle class were the three main factors which led to the effect, the Industrial Revolution in the UK. Okay, so 1 is C. Let's move on now to exercise 3 on page 32. Let me just make sure, yeah. So we've got there 5 ideas. Decide which of the following statements are debatable and which are non-debatable. So is it really point blank, or is it something that can be debated, negotiable? If the statements are debatable, use the types of essay from the task above. So the argumentative or cause and effect or classification to indicate how the statements could be developed in the rest of the paper. Okay, so the first one, the implementation of micromanagement strategies can greatly improve employee satisfaction. What I've done is I've gone ahead and written a sample thesis statement for this first statement only. And I've done an argumentative, a cause and effect, and a classification thesis statement. I would like for you to think about some of those ideas that could be used, and perhaps some additional ones, in order to create a thesis statement to debate this idea and to make it into an essay. So you can pause the video if you would like to take some time to do that, because I'm about to pull up the thesis statements that I wrote. Okay, the thesis statements that I wrote over here. We have that first statement. I'm going to say bye again. Bye. That first statement, the implementation of micromanagement strategies can greatly improve employee satisfaction. Yes, that's debatable. And then I've given there 3 different examples. So you can pause the video. I'm not going to read through them all, but there's an argumentative one, a classification one, and a cause and effect. So compare your thesis statements to mine, and perhaps if you would like to take it a step further, you can complete the rest of the exercise and post your work on the discussion forum in your class thread. Okay, the last thing that we're going to do today, we're going to discuss the in-class assignment, so the written assignment number 2. Or course assignment, not in-class assignment. The argumentative essay, what you all came here for. So you're going to take a side on an issue, and you are going to write a 700-word essay with a 10% margin either way on your position based on the statement, the thesis statement of your essay. And you need to choose one of these 5 topics. Okay, the reason for this is that students often waste a lot of time looking for a topic, and we don't want to waste any time here in this course. We want you to get going next week, boom, outline done, and that we really work on the writing process, not the research, finding a topic process. So you need to choose one of these 5 topics and then make it your own. Here we have the first one: should foreign language classes be mandatory in college? Should refugees take mandatory Western values and language classes? So I just want to give some examples for each one. Going back, sorry. The first one, should foreign language classes be mandatory in college? You need to make sure that you have somewhat of an idea of the scope of that. What do you mean by college? Do you mean all institutions of higher education, all programs? Or do you mean programs where it's only a monolingual program where they don't have any existing other language? What about programs that are in English but are in a language or in a country that speaks another language, such as the Netherlands? Do we mean hogescholen? Do we mean research universities? What do we mean by this? And what do we mean by foreign language classes? How many? To which extent? Just the basic A1, A2, or are we saying getting them up to a B2, C1 level on the Common European Framework? So you need to be a little bit more specific. I have had some students in the past, I've had some students in the past who have gone ahead and done it for high school instead, and then they focused on the secondary education, the preparation for college, and having mandatory foreign language classes at that level to prepare them for the college level. That's acceptable as well. You don't have to stick to exactly the topic as long as you have teacher approval, but it needs to be within these realms so that you have something doable and manageable to work off of. The second one, I have to look back again. Yes, so mandatory Western value classes, that's something such as what I had to do. I didn't have to take, as a U.S. citizen, I did not have to take classes, but I had to pass an integration exam to show that I understood the values and culture in the Netherlands. So do you think that classes on those things are mandatory should be mandatory for immigrants from non-Western backgrounds? Okay, and then you can again also approach whether it's just the classes that should be mandatory, or the exam and the classes, or the just the exam, and you need to lay out your arguments and make your arguments for that. The next one, should the people's voice be trusted? Now, the first thing that you think about with this is Brexit and referenda. That's not necessarily the only thing that connects to that. It's also just about democracy in general and people having a say in how their countries are run. One very current example is the coronavirus. Perhaps people's rights have kind of put a bit of a delay on some leaders of some countries responding to how serious they implemented social distancing laws. So that's something worth looking at as well, if you'd like to explore this topic further. And number 4, should companies be allowed to market advertise to children? This one tends to be a popular choice for students, and I am very much so pro stopping marketing geared towards children that could be towards something dangerous or where they take advantage of children. So data protection laws or YouTube type laws, or making sure that these e-cigarette companies are banned from doing this kind of marketing with flavors and colors and things in order to get minors to start vaping. So I totally am on board with that. However, many people many students have trouble with finding the parameters of what can they actually do with that, and what do they mean by marketing, and what do they mean to children. How can you really make rules or argue for specific things on that? Make sure that you know this topic well and what you're trying to argue for if you choose this topic. It's a great topic, but I do realize that students tend to choose this thinking that it's an easy topic to argue, and it's not necessarily. You have to really have good arguments in mind when you start writing and researching in order to write this one well. And the last one, should law enforcement officers in general or in a specific country, you can also decide on a county or a region like North Holland or South Holland, be required to wear cameras, body-worn video, documenting their activities. So this, especially as of a few years ago, it was really a hot topic in the United States. Many cases came up where police officers fatally shot and killed young black men because they thought that the black man, according to them, was coming to kill them or to shoot them, or it was self-defense or this or that. And the arguments based on witnesses and on the families of the victims really showed a different side of that. And if we don't have that body-worn video, then we have one thing less. Body-worn video is not always 100% accurate, so that's a clear counter-argument for it, as well as privacy laws and storage space and etc., etc. But it could be a really good, useful tool in the future to avoid such catastrophic, terrible things from happening. So this is also a really interesting topic to look at. In the bottom, in Appendix X, you'll see a short list of sources for each of these topics. Bear in mind that they have not been updated since the original creation of this module guide, so all of the sources are from 2016, 2016, and there are more recent articles on these topics, and you're strongly encouraged to find your own resources. The idea behind those sources at the bottom are just to give you a running start to get your mind thinking, and yes, you can still use one of those sources or all of those sources as references in your reference list, but by all means they should not be the only references that you use, because you should try to look at, there's been plenty written on these topics in the last 4 years as well. Okay, and then there's just some further guidance here I'm going to show you. Make sure that you, when you use the sources, that you use APA. You want to look at the Little Brown Handbook chapter on APA referencing and consult the European Studies Rating database in Blackboard. And there's also a style guide, which I have shared with some of my students, and there's a good website. It's also listed in your Introduction to Research Skills course material, and you can also go to apastyle.org for some additional information. There is no shortage of information on Blackboard. Okay, so on to what you have to do for next week. You need to choose a topic from that list on this page 33, and you need to submit an outline or a reasoning tree as explained. And you need to post it in your discussion forum on class threads. And this is the information that should be in there. So you're not going to be bringing it to class, but you are going to be posting it on class threads before your class. And you should look at this video, how to write a good argumentative essay with logical structure. And you should read Unit 9G in the Little Brown Handbook. So those are your assignments for week 1 of term 4, and you need to make sure to stay in touch with your teacher about the live lesson dates and times, and I will contact my students individually for our live lesson times. If you have any questions, make sure to contact your class teacher, and then if you don't get a response, or you are unable to sufficiently answer your question, you can reach out to me as well. Okay guys, thank you very much. I'm sorry if this video has been a little bit long. I wanted to make sure that I covered everything in our introduction to term 4, and I wish you the best of luck and happy writing. Bye bye.